people don't necessarily hate ads, but people hate bad ads.
Hey everyone, welcome back to our second edition of the Leaderboard Insights Podcast. I'm Nathan Lindberg, the head of North American Brand Partnerships at Overwolf. And joining me this week is my good friend Don McLean from Dentsu. Don, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is dope.
We're happy to have you. It's great to be here. Really excited to talk about some of the things that we're working on together and really dive into some of the issues that I think are really prevalent, and also talk about all the great newsworthy content that you guys have been releasing over there at Dentsu in the last couple of months on the wide world of gaming. To start out, though, why don't you give our viewers a little bit of background on yourself, just so we know who we're talking to?
Sweet. Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet because I hate talking about myself. But my name is Don. I'm the head of gaming agency services for the Americas at Dentsu. So what that essentially means is I'm kind of boots on the ground, talking with a lot of different clients, account teams, et cetera, just figuring out, where does gaming stand across the network? How do we energize it and power it up and get people hyped, and ultimately put together some great, meaningful, impactful strategies for brands. So it's kind of me in a nutshell. I've been in ad agency land for a little over 12 years now, doing everything from global strategy and US strategy to digital planning, social planning, PR, stuff like that. And yeah, I think that's me in a nutshell.
And you're a Rutgers guy, right?
I'm a Rutgers guy. I actually have a fat sandwich named after me at Rutgers, which I still put on my resume and LinkedIn profile. It's probably one of my greatest achievements in my professional and personal career.
There you go. Now everybody can go down there and get one and tell them Don sent you.
Yeah.
Dude, tell me, first and foremost, like, obviously being on an agency can be an incredibly thankless job. You are dealing with folks that are asking you for solutions and help and information about things that they know or don't know very well. But in your kind of just as an overall starting question, like, what is the most important thing that you need to articulate when you start talking to clients and they say, Don, you're a gaming guru? Like, tell me what I need to know. Like, what's the first thing that you try to articulate to brands that are looking at this space for the first time or for the 50th time?
I think, I think the most important thing I try to communicate is just that, or in some ways I kind of turn it back on them. It's like, what are you looking to do? Because, our team came up with a gaming report. We published a gaming report just a couple of weeks back, and it covers the full spectrum of the marketing funnel. And so there's the ecosystem and the landscape have evolved so much and have become so robust with multiple consumer touch points that I think it's almost too ambiguous a question to answer. Like, where should we go? Like, what should we do? So I often turn it back on them just to say, like, what are your priorities? Tell me more about your audiences. And if you don't know the answers to that, let's collaborate on it together, because I think it's really important to level set and create a foundation of, this is the business objective, the priorities, how we want to measure success. And then from there, once we start to dig into the audience data, it's at that point that we can start to really identify what are the most important territories we should be leaning into. How do we activate in a meaningful and measurable way? So yeah, that's usually kind of how the first interaction usually goes.
Yeah, that's great. And you talked a little bit about the gaming trends report. Obviously, a tremendous amount of effort covered by Variety. Lots of great exposure. I've had a chance to read it. A lot of folks in the industry say it's a really necessary piece of content to help folks understand gaming and understand it. Like, talk to me a little bit about how that whole thing comes to life. Like, is there a meeting room where everyone goes, you know what we really need? But how does that come together? Like, what was the thought process behind why you guys put it out there? And then kind of talk to me through a little bit about kind of the partners you chose, and how you look at building that type of industry report to make it as robust as it is.
Yeah, a lot of it comes from feedback we receive within the network, within the agencies. You know, at the end of the day, what we want to do is, as a global solution, we're looking to help champion gaming and help demystify a lot of the, opinions and concepts out there. And so usually, like, in a sense, there's kind of a war room, but ultimately it's us always consistently surveying the network to understand, what are you confused about? What are your pain points? What are the challenges either we experience internally, or what are challenges that clients and brands experience on their side? And we kind of take this all together and crystallize it or synthesize it down to figure out, okay, for our next report, we should tackle these topics because these seem to be the most burning topics that we think we can shine a light on and help clear up and make it feel more tangible. So we're super thrilled with the report that we just published. And, I want to thank you and your team again for your contributions and collaboration. We really are so thrilled with how the report turned out. And it's been really exciting to hear all the positive reception from account teams, clients, and the broader gaming industry. Our latest gaming report covers a good bit of information, and we aptly named it Your Marketing Cheat Code because what sets it apart is how we've structured the information to help coach stakeholders on how to think about and apply gaming across the funnel. We do cover a good amount of details, but I think that there are a few key takeaways from it that I want to kind of just like hammer home here. The first
give
is
us a sample.
Yeah, so like the first is little sneak peek, a little teaser.
Yeah.
But first, gaming isn't a trend; it's a cultural shift. We're seeing brands achieve full funnel results from awareness down to conversion and long-term loyalty, all by creating gaming first integrated strategies that cover multiple consumer touch points. Second, we have key partners that have emerged across the entire ecosystem, and they've each carved out their own unique slice of the pie, oftentimes complementing each other as well. And these partners we highlighted in the report, such as Overwolf, of course, but also Roblox, Activision Blizzard, and Discord, to name a few. These are prime examples of that. And they are some of the essential entry points into the ecosystem for brands that are looking to build authentic engagement and drive unique reach. I think the third takeaway is the rise of transmedia. IP owners aren't just licensing now, they're building and extending their complex worlds across movies, TV, comics, merchandise. And not only does this deepen the level of immersion, but it unlocks new storytelling possibilities and it creates persistent opportunities for connection. The fourth is,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry.
I thought you wanted three. Give us that fourth one. I want that.
No, I got more. I had a lot of coffee today, so I am energized. The fourth one is the evolving motivations and demographics. This probably isn't all that surprising, but relaxation and achievement are the two leading reasons for gameplay nowadays. And there's been a notable growth among both female gamers and older gamer segments, which of course only further diversifies the total gaming audience, which is awesome. And the fifth and last one is the community aspect of everything. Between the rise of curated gaming communities and the democratization of influence, these things are shifting power into the hands of players and consumers. And the brands that empower these communities through co-creation or exclusive access or whatever, they're the ones seeing positive ripple effects long after these campaigns end. And so, I've been rambling now for a little bit now, and covering those five takeaways, but I will say, maybe to kind of summarize it for brands, I think the big takeaway is that success in gaming requires a holistic, authentic approach. It's all about working with trusted partners, supporting communities, being present where people play, create, and socialize. And, this isn't to say that brands need to do everything all at once and jump right into the deep end, but I think it's worth putting together a strategy for how to tackle and approach it properly, and especially depending on which stage of the funnel you're looking at.
Yeah, it's great. Way to wrap it all together. I think there's a number of things in there that I want to double click into, as the kids would say. The first one I want to talk about, I think, really is the discussion of transmedia. And when you look at the Hollywood hit list, the movies that are having the most success, Minecraft movie is one of the top movies of the year so far in terms of revenue. You're seeing shows like The Last of Us. You're seeing a constant flow of gaming related content. There was Sonic 1, Sonic 2, now Sonic 3. And from all, we've heard, there's going to be a Sonic 14 if it keeps going this way. Does that help to open the tent and give advertisers more enthusiasm to invest in all aspects of gaming versus because it's going to the mainstream, it's going to the box office? Or does that create a struggle for nuance from your perspective?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it definitely creates nuance, but net, I think it's a great thing. In fact, I think it's dope. There's a few things I guess I want to cover here. I guess from a gaming IP perspective, it's not just smart to explore and embrace transmedia. It's a strategic evolution for these IPs that want to build both lasting cultural relevance and also just long-term resonance. Expanding a kernel of an IP across formats like movies, TV, comics. This enables franchises to do a few things. They can tap into the shifting media consumption habits. They can help future-proof their brands, and they can deepen connections with their passionate fan base. And the great thing is that each of these outcomes also boosts both business impact and community engagement. And actually, per our report we just published, we found that 49% of gamers feel more positive about a franchise when it expands across formats. And what's interesting is that, nowadays, some of the most popular games are essentially narrative engines because they're packed with rich lore and these multi-dimensional, nuanced, flawed characters. And these are the worlds that naturally lend themselves to storytelling beyond the game because it allows for side stories and side quests and new perspectives and adaptations that attract audiences who may have never known or played the original game before. And, going back to the franchises you mentioned, like The Last of Us, Minecraft, I think my favorite personally is Fallout, the TV show. Each of these have found success positioning themselves in broader pop culture this way. For the existing fans out there, these adaptations have fostered deeper immersion and closer ties to the IP universe. And then for the newcomers, these stories offer new entry points and a chance to discover and join that fandom for the first time. And, I think, again, here, the takeaway for brands is that this expanding ecosystem is a good thing. In fact, I think it's a huge win for them because transmedia means more meaningful touch points to align with an IP, to connect with those fandoms and communities, and to even creatively participate in fan culture across platforms. So I think, all in all, transmedia is kind of about transforming an IP into full spectrum entertainment. Doing so can help these franchises become, again, future proof. And it provides new dope value for fans and brands alike.
Yeah, I think we should talk about that because I one of the things as someone who grew up gaming and has more hours logged than the average person, is when you see franchises like, League of Legends, kind of translate into and evolve into Arcane, right? The most expensive um, show ever, animated show ever created, right? But the ability to share that with friends who don't play League of Legends and get them excited about the characters and the story and stuff like that, I think is something that also, as a gamer, it's a way for me to share, my passions and enjoyment with people outside of the mouse and keyboard, which I
Yeah.
think is an underappreciated aspect of this, is that I can have relationships with people who do not play games around gaming in a way that we've not seen before. I think the same thing is true with watching The Last of Us, right? If you've played The Last of Us, you know what's going to happen, right? It's the same thing for me. Like, I read the Game of Thrones books before Game of Thrones came out. So I knew what was going to happen. But to be able to sit with people who don't and share that experience, I think is a very unique opportunity from that perspective. And I think it helps to bring in more people into the industry and get people more excited. And, because it can be hard, because you look at older generations, folks that didn't grow up with a console in their household as a child or as a teenager and stuff like that, the thought still remains of like, yeah, that's what kids do. Like, that's a kid thing. When we look at Gen Z, though, Gen Z have not only grown up in households with a gaming console in it, but have grown up in a household with multiple gaming consoles in it, to the fact where they have their mobile device and their television now. And a lot of the things that they interact with on a daily basis have gaming built into it. As we think about Gen Z and speaking to Gen Z, the value of gaming is almost becoming the most focused and the most ubiquitous area of marketing to Gen Z. And so when you're talking to brands and having this conversation of like, ooh, gaming strategy, how often does that overlap now with just a Gen Z strategy?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think this is part of the reason why, our team places such emphasis on integrated gaming strategies, because at the end of the day, between media habits and consumption habits just changing over time, and, keeping in mind too that it's interesting to see how people receive their news, and not like, like real like political news or stuff, but just their news and like what keeps them up to date with with their passions and the industries. There used to be, more so kind of like beacons that people would like focus on and kind of gravitate towards. But I think over time we're seeing, communities becoming a bigger and bigger part of how people get their news and get their perspectives and get their takes. And so I think when we think about Gen Z, to your point, gaming isn't perhaps necessarily a passion that they've adopted. It's kind of just something that they've been born with, and it's innately part of their lifestyle. And so, we often think about gaming as like the new social platform, this new social media for Gen Z, just because of how much time and attention is spent there, and the willingness to express themselves more freely on these platforms in these worlds. And so I think when we think about Gen Z or brands looking to reach Gen Z, gaming is one of the most obvious, I'll say, solutions, just because of how robust the ecosystem is, and across multiple touch points, be it digital, more traditional, there's ways of reaching them. And I think ultimately, if you can communicate a cohesive message across these touch points, then it goes a long way. And so I think, again, when we think about Gen Z, gaming is obviously a very innate part of that engagement plan, purely because, yeah, it's just a passion that's part of their day-to-day life.
Yeah. When we talk about fandom, I think there's so many conversations and misinterpretations that somehow, gamers' passion and their devotion and their fanaticism for the products, the IP, the communities that they're around, that they seem to be uh, disinterested in advertising to those communities and stuff like that. And I think it's one of the largest misnomers in the space. And I hear it a lot from brands and advertisers. Oh, gamers don't like advertising. And I think that that is something that we continually try to battle. Obviously, as an advertising agency, you have an incentive to advertise and help brands do that. As you're thinking about how you immerse your brands and your clients into these fandoms and these areas of opportunity, what are the hallmarks that you have to get your clients to stick to in terms of being perceived as a value add and having success within these communities?
Yeah. I think, to your point about ads, like, I don't think, I mean, I guess we've been saying it for a while now. Like, people don't necessarily hate ads, but people hate bad ads, right? And I think when we think about things through the lens of gaming fandoms, what makes gaming fandoms, I think, especially powerful in, driving consumer behavior is the depth and quality of engagement that you see within these communities. I think there's a few reasons why. First, gaming is fundamentally interactive. Players don't just play, they watch, create, and actively engage with the IP and each other. And this leads to strong emotional connections, which I think makes sense, right? I mean, if you spend hours upon hours enveloped in a story and with other players, you start to develop a real bond there and a real passion that resonates outward. Second, these communities are highly social, whether it's online guilds, Discord servers, or online tournaments. Gaming fandom is built on connection and belonging. And that sort of shared identity is really powerful, and it can fuel loyalty and it can fuel brand advocacy. Third, I think there's a sort of flywheel effect, a cultural flywheel, where players are given the tools to, when players are given the tools to create mods, share content, or organize events, they essentially become co-creators of culture. And it's such an awesome feeling when you get to leave your fingerprint on something, like when you're able to point back and say like, yo, I helped shape that, or I helped create that. That feels really awesome. And all of this results in just even more conversation, perhaps even more memes, and even more grassroots activity. And I think there's also this commerce aspect to it too. Gaming can organically integrate brand moments, in-game skins, branded collabs, and merchandise. All of these can be seen as ads, of course, but when done right, they become part of that experience and can even become badges of identity or status. I mean, we all know that, that saying or term of wearing your passion on your sleeve. And, we see that firsthand more and more across all of these different platforms. So I think, again, just to kind of connect it back to brands, gaming can be seen as just kind of a targetable passion to align with. Sure, perhaps that's the first step. But if you really dig into these fandoms, gaming is also a pretty great way of driving loyalty, advocacy, and cultural influence. When brands lean in authentically and add their own form of unique value, they can achieve a level of meaningful engagement and business impact that's pretty freaking tough to replicate anywhere else. So I think that's really the true value and power of gaming fandoms.
Yeah, let's dive into that too, because I think it's always a good time to talk about good ads. I know there's a couple campaigns that we wanted to talk about specifically, one involving Overwolf and one not in terms of Tropicana and Butterfinger. These are some new campaigns that Dentsu is rolling out. You all are kind of consistently pushing the envelope on gaming and getting more brands in gaming. I think people would be surprised when they hear Tropicana and Naked Juice as a brand that is getting into gaming. But talk a little bit kind of how that comes to life, and were there insights that led to this? Like how are you all able to kind of bring them into this space? And How do you feel about the program in terms of how it's been executed?
Yeah. First off, before diving into it, I have to shout out the entire Dentsu network because, I can't bore you for the next like 2 hours, but we're doing so much dope stuff across the network that we have to do a part two of this. But to your point, I'm so proud of the work of the Naked Juice teams, and again, I got to shout out, our incredible clients, our planning teams at DensuX and the Overwolf teams, of course, because everyone was fantastic collaborators every step of the way. The campaign was all about meeting gamers where they are right in the heart of those long play sessions and, leading up to all this, we did our homework and, we found that gamers tend to get hungry roughly around the 78-minute mark, in those long sessions. So, we used that insight to serve up contextual messages linked to playtime. So the timing was genuinely relevant and it showed. I mean, when we look at the performance, it's a great story. The campaign exceeded numerous benchmarks, multiple placements over delivered, VCRs were above average, some of the CTRs were incredibly strong. And it was really cool to see which gaming communities this resonated with most too. For example, World of Warcraft was up there with some of the highest completion rates, which, going back to your point earlier, I think that tracks. Players spend a lot of time grinding for hours on end sometimes. So a brand like Naked Juice, where you can hydrate and curb your hunger without ever missing a beat or stepping away, it just makes sense. And I think kind of the cherry on top is, even beyond those media metrics, our brand metrics also saw a solid bump in awareness and positive attributes. So overall, I just love how this campaign came to life and it really, I mean, we see in the performance again, we see how it really nailed true relevance with these gaming audiences.
So it's energy drinks and salty snacks out and Green Machine in, it sounds like, for these World of Warcraft players. And I think that
Yeah.
those are interesting things to realize of, like, I think there's often this desire to put users in boxes and say, oh, well, if they're a World of Warcraft gamer, they're like that South Park episode. And no, actually, I think people want to make the decision they want to make. They want to have the options and they're open to new things. And, it's great to see that a product and a service that is running, on a relevancy can have really strong effect and also show up in the right way. Other campaign I know you guys are really proud of, I'm going to talk about a little bit, is the Butterfinger campaign. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, so with Butterfinger, we've partnered with 2K Games and Gearbox for the upcoming launch of Borderlands. And I think it's a great example of matching an iconic brand with an iconic game and really just doing something that's cool and fun and value additive to those fans and that community. The whole idea is built upon the Game Better with Butterfinger platform, and we've leaned in all the way. There's been a big sweepstakes with weekly prize drops, with codes, full game collections, custom merch, Butterfinger swag, some in-game golden keys as well. And I think what just makes it so special is that it was really, truly a full team, multi-team effort, across Dentsu, across Butterfinger, the IAT, 2K, Gearbox. And as a result, of all these teams and different perspectives and expertise coming together, we've really dialed into what fans actually care about. Players get to win stuff they genuinely value, and Butterfinger gets to be part of that celebration and this big moment and the lead up to it. So it's fun, it's community first, and it feels right for everyone, for the brand, for the creators, and for the fans themselves.
Yeah, it's super cool. And obviously, when you have a character like Clapper, it's really, there's no more perfect person to lay their hands on a Butterfinger than Clapper. In terms of, those timelines and stuff like that, those are more robust timelines and some of that, right? Those are like with movies and stuff like that. That's stuff that takes months and months of work, right? Not just something you can roll together in an 8-week time frame.
It's true, yeah. Ultimately, it does depend on all the moving pieces and the nature and complexity of each partnership and each campaign. But I mean, as with most things that are kind of like sharing of IPs and that kind of that collaboration aspect, legal is always involved. And so, you sometimes have to play it a little bit on the safe side and accommodate for some of the legal back and forth that's required. Because I think, as we all know, that can sometimes take some time. Sometimes it goes pretty quickly, but it's best to kind of accommodate that in your lead times just to make sure that you don't get stuck in a weird situation.
Good to have a guy that knows. Lastly, as we talk about, it's oftentimes in the advertising industry, it's Christmas in July. So let's make New Year's predictions in August. As we look to 2026, Don, there's a lot of stuff happening. The gaming industry has continually been evolving and reimagining itself in a lot of different ways. There's lots of new areas of opportunity and stuff like that. As you look to the horizon, as you look to 2026, again, sneak peek. But what are the things? What are the trends? What are the opportunities that you see for brands as they start to sit down and actually start to plan out 2026 and how they want to change their media, and what are those opportunities that might exist within the world of video games?
Well, I'll start off with perhaps an obvious one, which is just that gaming in general is still a significant white space for so many brands out there. It's a huge missed opportunity in general. Time spent with gaming has increased 6% year over year. And meanwhile, gaming still receives less than 5% of the total media budgets. So there's that. But even just kind of putting that aside, I think that the biggest opportunities are moving forward are going to be the ones where brands can basically go from passive to active. Community-based activations will matter more and more. Co-creating with players, participating in Discord servers, supporting modding communities, collaborating with streamers. All of these are ways in with communities, and increasingly community matters more and more. And beyond that, I think that UGC will also become even more vital to the ecosystem, whether it's mods or custom maps or in-game skins or virtual merchandise. I think brands should lean into it and support it. And better yet, even offer up their own resources to make those experiences even better for players. Because I think, brands can hold a lot of power. So if you can unlock some of that power for the communities, it goes a long way. And maybe just lastly is the commerce aspect. I really believe, and I think a lot of the industry believes that, in-game commerce opportunities will only continue to grow. The connections linking digital achievements to physical rewards are becoming more and more sophisticated and robust. And as time goes on, these will offer up new ways for brands to add their own unique value and complement that experience in their own way. So I think that the brands that win in the future will be the ones who have an engagement layer above and beyond the standard reach play, where they unlock new value for players. They build something together with communities. And of course, I think you just got to stay nimble to the ecosystem because things only continue to evolve. So community, co-creation, commerce, I think that's where it's at.
I love a good alliteration to end the show. Don McLean, America's lead for gaming at Dentsu. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it. And the insights, as always, legendary.
Appreciate your time. This was awesome. Thanks so much, Nathan.
Wonderful. Thank you. This has been the Leaderboard Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Lindberg, Head of Brand Partnerships North America at Overwolf, and we'll see you next time.